Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. I'm Justin, and tonight we are going to discuss 2009's Splice, directed by Vincenzo Natali and starring Sarah Polley, Adrien Brody, Delphine Chaneac, and David Hewlett. Clive and Elsa are genetic engineers on the verge of global fame. Although they are instructed to stop any further progress on their latest controversial project, the two genetic engineers decide to proceed in secret. Unfortunately, their latest project has a mind of its own. Splice is for the horror fan that enjoys sci-fi horror with a hip modern edge. Also joining me tonight is my wonderful co-host, Zena Dixon. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Rabid Dog's House, where we like to discuss lost or forgotten horror gems with a little bit of bite. I'm Justin, and as always, my fabulous co-host, Zena Dixon, the beautiful, wonderful, and talented, amazing real queen of horror, is joining us tonight. How are you doing tonight, Zena?
Gosh, Justin, thank you. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm also doing really well. Very excited to talk about 2009 Splice with you. As always, everybody, we'll start off with our non-spoiler reviews. You will not get bitten, and then we will give you a ample warning when it comes time for spoilers. But I'll just say this movie, I'm very much excited. I'm very excited to discuss this because we discussed how you and I have not done a lot of sci-fi on this show. And so when we were discussing that, I'm like, well, you know what? Let me show Xena one of the most infamous sci-fi movies that I know, and one of my favorites, Splice. And it's one that I've loved for a really long time. And I actually consider it to be one of the best horror films of the 2000s. Um, but I also think it's really starting to slip into forgotten territory. And I think it's one of those movies, though, that once you've seen it, it sticks with you, but it's just getting lost to newer generations. Now, I think Splice is full of plenty of gore, interesting concepts, unexpected twists. But the main reason that I love Splice and the reason I wanted to see it in the first place is because I am a big fan of Sarah Polley, who plays Elsa, from Go to Dawn of the Dead, who winning the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay of Women Talking. I love all her work, films, book, her documentaries, everything. I grew up watching her as Ramona the Pest on the Canadian series Ramona. And I will always, first and foremost, think of her as Sarah Stanley from Road to Avonlea. For those of us in the US that grew up watching the Disney Channel, Avonlea, it was a Canadian series. And much to her chagrin, because I have her book, and I know that that's like she would not want to be remembered as Sarah Stanley from Road to Avonlea, but that's why I love her because I grew up where she's a little older than me, but I grew up watching her, and everything I've ever seen her in too, like Go is one of my favorite movies. Dawn of the Dead, I think, is one of the best horror remakes. So when I knew that Splice was coming out, I'm like, well, I've got to see that. And sadly, it's one of her like last film roles because like acting roles because she then went into directing. She did Away from Her, Take This Waltz, nominated for Academy Award. I mean, she is uber talented. And I am sad that she doesn't act anymore because this was, I think, her last acting performance. But she always, after Avonlea, because her character on Avonlea was definitely the good girl, prim and proper. But like every role she did, she became like an indie queen of the '90s, and every character she played after this was like complex, interesting, maybe sort of corrupt, ethically challenged, which is definitely the character of Elsa. And so anyway, that was the big draw for me with Splice. And, there's a lot in this film, a lot to recommend it, especially for horror fans. But for me personally, Sarah Polley's the main draw. And I think Adrien Brody is great here too. I'm kind of hit or miss with him, but I believe them as a couple. And again, like I said, I'm always hit or miss with him. I actually like him here for the most part. And I think that's because he's kind of like, even though he's the leading man, he lets, the women in this film shine. I
Mhm.
think that's why I maybe kind of like him in this role. And I did not realize this until last night when I was doing some research on this. David Hewlett is in this movie. He plays like the other, not the brother, but the other scientist guy. I did not realize he was the main guy in Pin, like the one who
Oh,
went like crazy.
yeah.
He's like the sort of antagonist scientist guy who's like always at them. Yeah, he was the guy in Pin. Leon. He was Leon in Pin. I was just like
That's
mind blown. Right, which we did an episode of. So I thought you'd find, the fun fact for all of us, for those watching this, but other than amazing performances, and there are so many, including Delphine, who I will not be able to pronounce her last name. It's French. It's like very like Sarah Rook or something. Yeah, I'm butchering it. So I won't butcher her last name any further. But Delphine, who plays Adult Dren, she is also amazing in this. But it's just in general, Splice is an interesting, terrifying, and above all, shocking film. There's also, I also like about it, there's that sort of nerd cool culture at play, like Clive and Elsa. They're presented as like almost pop stars or rock stars in the genetic engineer, field, which really I think connects the audience. Like it's not just two scientists, like they're kind of cool, so it draws you in. And even the company they work for is NERD nerd. It's fun. I always like those kind of like wink nudges to nerd culture. But and we'll get into this in spoilers, but it is a really well crafted film without seeming contrived. Because like for instance, I am by no means a science guy. Science was not my strong suit. But I feel like you don't need to be. I feel like the film is, really set up in two acts, and that like everything that happens in the first act kind of duplicates in the second act. Like with Fred and Ginger and all that, so that you can understand what happens, even if you're not like a science person at all. Now, again, when I first watched this, I watched it as a fan of Sarah Polley. I thought she was amazing, but I became really invested in the film itself, or, shocked as I watched it, if you will. And I really could not catch my breath the first time I watched it until the end. And I think even when I watch it now, I still have that, like, oh, I know what's coming. I just think there's so many unexpected twists because you cannot believe the filmmakers are going to go to the places that they go, but they do. And at the same time, it's like because of the way the film's set up, you are prepared for it, but you're also never prepared for it. Overall, Splice is totally gross in the best ways, but it's also gross in the worst ways. It's also smart and led by, very strong performances. So I highly recommend Splice. When we were discussing, hey, we were talking about like let's maybe do a sci-fi film. I'm like, well, I've got one for you, Zena. And if I understand correctly, this was your first time watching Splice. So I am very curious to hear your thoughts and experience on Splice.
Of course. I feel like you explained it so well. So I love Sarah Polley as well. So I remember when I first heard about this movie, I was trying to think, okay, why didn't I watch it? It's like one of those movies that I didn't watch. And you know what it is? It's like you, I'm not the biggest fan of like sci-fi horror. But the crazy thing is, whenever I do watch it, I always have such a good time. So I'm so happy that you suggested this movie, because by far this movie is so unique. I have not seen anything like it at all. You think that like obviously do not read reviews, read Wikipedia, any of that stuff. You think you know what's going to happen, and it completely turned. I feel like all the performances was so great. The storyline, it is so enticing, like you said, with these two scientists, they're like rock stars of the company. They can do no wrong. They can do whatever they want. And I like it. Like it has that early 2000s, movie vibe going on. And where it's like, yeah, I love them together as a couple. But you can tell there's a little dynamic in there with Elsa. She wants to be in control. With Clive, I don't think he wants to be in control, but I think that he wants to, he wants her to be happy. And, I can only imagine being a woman in that particular space that she probably went through a lot of things. So the fact that where it's like, okay, he completely has her back, he listens to what she says, but she's still sneaky. about a lot of things. And it's like, I don't think you have to do that, you know? Like they both did some very, very questionable things, which we'll get into it. And, on the outside, this movie, it seems like, okay, this is like a monster movie, but I feel like there's something else that's there. I just really overall, I enjoyed watching it. But if I'm being honest, because I watched it yesterday, then I watched it again today, I have to take a break from it. Not that it's like, hey, no, you gotta watch it again tonight. Of course not, but it's one of those movies where, okay, if you love, obviously there's horror elements, there's some science, some sci-fi stuff that's going on, there's drama, and the drama is hot, okay? It is oozing hot drama that stressed me out so bad. And that's the part where it's like I have to take a break. Not even from the horrific scenes, because there's some stuff. We see some stuff, some gooey stuff, and I can handle that. I can handle the horror. I can handle the blood. I'm good with that. It's the drama where it's just like, what? Like I found myself covering my mouth. I had to pause the movie a couple of times, take breaks. Like there's just so much, and it sounds so dramatic, but it's the truth because if you've seen this movie, then you know what I'm talking about. It is such an emotional movie. So like you have these two scientists and it's about, it's about what they're working on. You know what I mean? They don't see this thing as a living being, as a human. So it's just an experiment, right? But then it turns into something else unintentionally, feelings arise with this stuff. And it's just, there's a lot of fears and it shifts very easily into the horror lens. And it's like, man, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear the way they pitch this movie. Like, because,
Right?
right? Because okay, well, it's basically about these two scientists. They decided to do an experiment that's not, really approved. She's like, oh, okay, I feel like we've seen that before, right? But have you? But yeah, again, I really love the performances. I feel like this movie has so much layering to it. It's so well crafted. I feel like it's so important for you to be able to watch it a second time around, maybe even more than once. I need a break though, maybe even more than once, just so you can grasp certain things. Because I'll tell you this, like the second time around, of course, this is how it is with a lot of movies. The second time around I watched this movie, you just see things different. You see things different. You can see that there's a lot of power battles going on back and forth, and again, I don't want to spoil it. It's not so much even between Clive and Elsa. It's not so much even between Clive and his brother. It's there's some stuff, guys. And yeah, I highly recommend it. And this is coming from someone like you again, Justin. I'm not the biggest sci-fi horror fan. It's not my go-to, but by far this is one of the best ones that I checked out.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. And from here out, everybody, spoilers. I can actually tell. I think Xena's ready to get into the spoilers, and and I get it. I'm ready to get into spoilers too. So everybody, you've been warned, spoilers. Oh, so much that I want to say in general, but also just respond to. Yeah, growing up, I just sci-fi horror was never my thing. The closest I would say, and I get it, everybody, it's not, would be like the fantasy horror, like Nightmare on Elm Street or stuff like that. It wasn't until I was in my mid to late teens that I really came around to like the Alien series. And now the Alien franchise is like top tier on my favorite. I go to it several times a year and I love them all from Alien through Alien Covenant, Prometheus, Alien, like so that kind of sci-fi horror I have really got into. But yeah, I've always kind of it just didn't pull me in. But I'd say over the past few years I've gotten more into it. And if I go back and think about it, it really is Alien and Splice that kind of, because I think Splice came out in 2009. So it was
Mhm.
after that that I started coming around to it again. And I do have a new appreciation for it. Like I just watched Existence, which also has Sarah Polley in it in a tiny little role. But movies like that, I think the sci-fi horror realm, like, because I do like sci-fi films in general. Like I grew up watching The Time Machine, old classics like that. And but the combination was never a big deal for me. But things like this, I think we talk a lot on this channel about like even our last episode we did Far From Home. We're fine with like movies that also don't really make you think, cheeseburger movies compared to filet mignon. Now this though I think is more like filet mignon. I think this movie does make you think, it does shock you, but I like that this one does pose profound questions. I like that this one does make you think a little harder. You do have to kind of go back and watch it, but you're also afraid to go back and watch it because of the shock
Yeah.
and the emotional toll it takes on you. So as much as you and I love those kind of like the you don't have to think, we just go on for the roller coaster ride movies. I love those too. I think they're just as important. But I am glad we're talking about something like Splice because I think this one it's going to ask you some important questions. And this movie definitely crosses a lot of lines. Now, I'd like to start off with the performances because when we talk about our favorite scenes, that's when I'm going to, you go right ahead, but that's when I'm going to get more to my thoughts about the questions that are being asked in total. But it does cross a lot of lines. And it is about ego. It's about morally ethical questions, things that are still relevant today, genetic engineering, splicing, again, I'm by no means a scientist, and I leave that to the smarter people to decide things. But I think that this movie does make the regular person understand a little bit better the potential issues that come from these sort of things, from playing God essentially. So that's when I'll start off with Sarah Polley as Elsa and our the performances. I love all of her ego in this movie, though, and she is a very egotistical character. And, I know what I was going to say, and this combines with that. It reminds me of my review of 2017, 2018 Suspiria, the remake.
Mhm.
People had like really hot or cold reactions to it. And some people were like arguing from a feminist standpoint their dislike of it. But feminism means like representing all women. Some are bad, some are good, some are evil, some are wonderful. I like movies that I think are real feminist movies shows a character like Elsa who is sort of deplorable at times. But she's also really smart. She's also very generous. She's also very selfish. Like she's a real person, and that is what I think like feminism's always trying to get in film. And you can't just have good, strong like the Ellen Ripley's or the Linda Hamilton's strong female characters. You have to have sometimes the like morally bankrupt characters that are women as well, and that's Sarah Polley as Elsa. And I don't think it would work as well with another actress, or there's few actresses other than Sarah Polley who can pull this off because I don't think she ever comes across as unlikable. You're
Mhm.
shocked by what she's doing. You think what she's doing is like awful,
Yeah.
you still never lose your sort of like investment in her, which is really important for the finale because you have to care about her. And Elsa as a character really has some serious issues that she has not dealt with. But Sarah plays Elsa as a woman who knows she is the smartest person in every room.
Yeah.
And I just like to say too that the interesting thing too is all the themes at play. You do have a woman like Elsa who does not want to be a mother, yet she is the one that bonds with Dren first as a parental figure.
Yeah.
We never really learn the details about Elsa's relationship with her mother, but it's very much implied it wasn't good.
Right.
And this leads Elsa to skirt the line between ethical and unethical when it comes to Dren. And although Dren is like a child to Elsa, and literally because we find out it's Elsa's DNA, Elsa is stunted in this regard, maybe because of her relationship with her mother. And she treats it's like people who become parents who shouldn't become parents. And sometimes they treat their children like a pet or a doll. And then when the child has like human reactions because they're a human, the parent is all like upset and offended by their child because the child's a human being. It's like oh, you didn't think maybe this person might have thoughts that you created. Just again, Sarah Polley is also very smart, overly sweet with Trent, but also incredibly harsh with Trent.
Mhm.
Sarah Polley was, acting as a young child, and she understands character development, incredibly well. Hence why she became a director and a screenwriter. She gets, these characters, and yet she never loses, even at the end, her sense of survival mode or intelligence. She realizes, well, here's this situation, I'm going to profit off of it. So,
Mhm.
like everything else in this movie, whether or not that's a good thing, is left up to the audience. Adrien Brody as Clive. I think the reason I like him in this is because again he has no power over Elsa. He is a smart guy. He is a smart scientist. He obviously contributes just as much, but he ultimately always bends to whatever Elsa wants. And I think that Adrian Brody makes some very brave choices because he is certainly not the hero of this film. You know, in addition to being like a weak man, and this is shown not because of how he is with Elsa, but because of his ultimate relationship with Dren, that I think makes him a weak man, because it's completely messed up. But for me, also, for most of the film, I was hoping that he would just be nice to Dren until he became too nice, too friendly. But like you are watching him like, come on, you want him to like Dren. And so again, brave choices that he's like being kind of mean to the child Dren, but also because he's a weaker character in this, and then eventually he takes things too far. So definitely a brave choices on Adrien Brody's part. And then Delphine as Dren, she does a fascinating job at having this almost feline quality, but then it dips between childlike naivety into being a terrifying predator. You never lose this feeling of dread with her. She draws you in, and you want nothing bad to happen to her. But she also has a strong enough presence that she could do some real damage if she wants to. And so again, nobody is completely innocent. Nobody is completely guilty in this. But I loved her performance. I like that she was able to walk that line of like your heart breaks for her, and yet you're also terrified of her. Like I think it's just great. So I think everybody else does great too. David Hewlett, again, like I said, from Penn, so he'll always have a special place in my heart. But in this, he doesn't have much of a role in this, but he definitely has a presence and is enough of an antagonist. Like, he's sort of the dumb scientist, meaning he's like the bureaucratic one. He doesn't do the real science work. So I love the little like jabs that Elsa gives him throughout, like at one point, because she's so cocky that she
Yes.
does the protein and kind of walks by him, and she's like, "And when one of the real scientists get here, you can have them check it." It's just, and he takes it, he embodies the character that you believe that he's this guy. The brother, Adrien Brody's brother in this, I didn't really care for him that much, to be honest. I feel like they went too out. That was my one. If I have one complaint about Splice, I feel like they tried too hard to give them the same hairstyle and stuff so that you're like, oh, they're brothers. I and it happens, real brothers do have the real hairstyle or have similar hairstyles at times, but I feel like it was just they were pushing too hard.
So yeah, I'll start with Clive. I kind of touched on him before. Overall, he made such a very dumb decision, right? But beforehand, I really didn't mind him as a person. I felt like he was more level-headed compared to Elsa. Like I understand, like yes, this experiment, they've been working on it for years. You don't want to do something so basic. So how about we take this on? And it seems fine. Like let's make an adventure out of it. However, we don't know how long they've been together, but we do know that just thinking on it with common sense, Clive knows Elsa. So knowing that she's gonna want her way. So yeah, you do this, but there's gonna be something that you guys don't agree on, and you know what I mean. It's all fun and games, and like I remember he was getting so irritated at a certain point, like still in the beginning, because she was like really treating this thing like a baby, And I agree with you when it comes to Elsa, even though she felt like she's the smartest person in the world, that her opinion mattered the most, she's still kind of likable, right? But there was still some things that she would do. I found myself, Justin, screaming at the screen constantly, burn it. Like that's what I was screaming, because it's just like she was really treating it like that. And at first it was cute, with the letters and spelling out the stuff. But then for me, it went, it stopped being cute when she did attack. Oh, this kind of jumping ahead, but when she attacks the brother, right? The character, well, the little girl who played Dren and then the older Dren, I thought they both did like a great job, but I'm just not a fan of the character, right?
Ooh.
And I'll tell you why. Ever since the beginning, because I guess because you watch a lot of movies, but I knew that it wasn't going to end well. And at first, even when I saw it was just like I didn't think it was cute. I wasn't like, oh no, I didn't think that, but. I'm really surprised. I was surprised that Elsa was so drawn to it and like really taking on that mother figure, right? So something in her does have that. Obviously, she does have that. And I think she would have been a great mom, you know? And even with her chance with trying to be one, that's what kind of sucks about it because, I really do feel like she softened up with Dren, and Dren kind of like burned those bridges in so many ways. And then yeah, I mean, and then even with the other scientists that worked, I don't remember the woman's name, but she was the one where she was in the
Like the
main,
head lady.
the head lady. I got what she was saying, but even though I love Elsa and Clive, but when she pretty much said to them, like, no, this is not what we're doing, I got what she was saying, right? But I knew obviously that they weren't going to listen. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a movie. But it's like, I'm so surprised that a place like that doesn't have more cameras. Like, they didn't have cameras or security guards, constantly circling the building. Not so much even for the workers, but just keeping things together. So there's that. But yeah, overall, I really liked all the performances. I have so much to say though, like with like the different dynamics, and I know that we'll get into that soon.
This is one reason, though, I think Splice is tough, is because it's not a film about likable people. And I do have to say that I don't think that Elsa would be a good mom. I think what it is like she had this, and this is just my opinion, but I think that like what the film is ultimately showing is that people like her initial gut instinct was like she doesn't want to have children right now. I think she said something to the effect of like I don't want to bend my life to a third party that doesn't exist yet. And I think that it like when Bren did appear and the excitement of that, it is like when a parent who didn't want to be a parent has a child. I
Mhm.
think she was excited about it, but she because of her own messed up relationship with her mother, she treats Dren like this is what I was kind of alluding to earlier. I think that there are people like that that treat their children almost like a doll or a pet, expecting them to be in this thing. And so when you're like, oh, you are cute, and oh, this, you're like a little mini me. That's awesome. But you kind of realize by Elsa's actions that, like, oh, wait, no, her initial instinct was right. She should maybe not be a mother. She can't handle the like challenge. Now, again, nothing in this movie is black and white, and we'll get to it because it's one of my favorite scenes. But Dren is, clearly threatens her. But I think like because of the whole cat thing that happened before, Elsa was getting jealous that like Dren was like wanting to be with Clive more. And so she decided to passive aggressively take the cat away. There was no reason for her to.
Yeah.
And, to make a point. And it goes to show, again, I don't encompass all bad parenting as something as simple as that. But I think you would have only liked the good parts of it.
Mhm.
Bad parts she clearly could not handle. But I will say, so my favorite scenes, like I love the birth of Dren, especially from like a horror standpoint. I think it's heart pounding. The whole scene, it's like you already have seen Fred and Ginger as these gross blob things.
Yeah.
So when like Elsa gets her arm caught, you don't know yet what's in there, but you've seen what's already come out of there. So when you see her arm is stuck in there. That's already like, oh no, that's like one of my biggest fears is getting my arm stuck in something. She pulls it
Yeah.
out. She's got all these cuts over here. But then when he does pull the like cover and it's this, there's a picture right here, everybody, of what it is. It's so gross that
Yeah.
like again, my jaw just dropped. I really do like all the moments of Trent as a child, the child version, if you will, because you're being lulled into this false sense of hope. I got excited when I first see like how smart she is playing with the little Scrabble
Yeah.
tiles and learning from the test. It's like, oh, they, for me watching it, I'm like, oh, I'm excited that like they are smart. Elsa's coming off as this like cocky person, but maybe she's living up to it.
Mhm.
Knowing, and that's also what I love is the sense of dread, knowing the whole time this is gonna go bad. This is just gonna go horribly wrong. And which then leads to the first big event, which is Dren's fever. Another favorite scene because he's still a child at this time, and you don't want her to die. You know something bad is going to happen, but you don't want to see a little childlike creature die, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And what I loved about that scene is that like you think that Clive is going to drown her because but although putting her in the water saves her, and he did in fact know that at one point, or looked at one point and noticed her lungs were different. They're still not left the end of that scene knowing full well if he was intending to save her because he's like, oh, I knew she had amphibious lungs or whatever. But like, you also know that he equally wants this to be over and done with. So when she's like asking Elsa, you did know, right? He's like, yeah. You don't know to believe him. And again, that's I think the true like purpose of this movie is that you're left with these questions amongst these questionable people. And I think that's one scene that really like points that out. And then again, the end of the first act, Fred versus Ginger, despite all the unethical things that these two have done now up to this point, at least for me, I somehow still wanted them to like succeed. I don't know. I always had this fear, even in watching films, of like when people have to put on a presentation and it goes wrong. Well, it
Yeah.
could not go more wrong than it does in this moment, in this scene, and it goes wrong in every possible way. It's just so visceral. And I think shocking is really the word that comes to my mind the most when I'm left with Splice, and I'm sure most people's minds. But it is the real first, like, real turn in Splice, but it's also the first real warning because it sets up what happens to Ginger is that she turns into like a male
Hmm.
version, which happens in nature, that's going to happen ultimately to Dren. So it leads to like the shocking ending. Um, Also, one of my favorite moments too is just when Dren reveals her wings for the first time. I just thought, there's not much I could say about it. It was just a cool moment because honestly, every scene to me is just unexpected and fascinating once Dren is in her adult form. Because one, you now know things are really gonna like the child version, you feel like Elsa and Clive still have control. Once Trent becomes an adult, you know they're not going to have control. And I think this is when it really starts asking so many large questions at like all times. Like we find Elsa put herself in the experiment by using her own DNA. Clive's initial hesitancy with Trent, but then he does the worst possible, unimaginable thing with Trent. It's so like the first time. I mean, and from then on out, I mean, my jaw just dropped. You don't know how to react to it, but it's already asking us all these ethical questions, like the fact that they even attempted to do this base thing of splicing human DNA, controversial and questionable. The fact that Elsa puts her DNA in it, that's what you're not supposed to do as a scientist. All these things. So like it's as Clive says, it's like one more thing, but like to have sex with the experiment is just bizarre, like
Yeah.
shocking, gross, disgusting, but
Yeah.
bizarre, bizarre. But then the whole cat sequence, you feel for, because again, it takes you on all these different turns. You feel for Dren wanting a pet, and you are upset when Elsa takes this cat away. You kind of understand because she does not want Dren to get sick, but it's really because Elsa is feeling a little powerless and left out of Dren getting closer with Clive. But also, when Elsa gives her back, you think, okay, Elsa's doing the right thing. She is maybe going to be a good mother to Dren. And then Dren kills the cat. And that's because, again, it's not, Dren is no longer a child. Dren proves how dangerous she is. She
Hmm.
killed the cat because the cat was no longer hers. Why she wanted the cat was not for a pet, but because it was something that was not given to her. It was something she discovered. So she's like, I don't want that piss. That's you. You gave me that now, and I don't want that. And I think like that shows the whole power struggle that's there between parent and child. But also because of Sarah Polley, the parent is going to win. And
Yeah.
even though, if you could, even at Dren at this time, Dren could destroy Sarah Polley like that. But Sarah Polley Elsa has this power that like she still is going to overcome. And it's asking all these mixed questions. Elsa could easily defend why she's removing Dren's tail, which is traumatic to watch. But it's also because it's questioning the humanity of all of this, because Dren is clearly terrified and being dehumanized. But Dren is also showing that she could have killed Elsa with her hooked tail right.
Yeah, so starting off light, like I really love the opening. Like the intro to the movie when you're seeing the credits that it's on the skin. And it's just like I knew that there'll be some like gooey stuff, but this was way gooier than I thought it was going to be. So I love that it kind of like set the tone with it. Then I kind of love, the scene, the birthing scene as well. As a horror fan, you know what I mean? It's really thrilling to see. You don't know what to expect, but when her hand, like you said, when her hand gets stuck, Elsa's, it's just like, oh no, is it gonna take her hand? You know, and then does she have like a seizure? Like something starts, she has like a reaction to it, and it's just like, whoa, right? So that's great. And I do love the scene when Elsa, when she first comes across Dren and she feels like, it's not going to hurt her. It's just more scared than anything, you know? So it showed that, Dren always had that little spice in her, that's always been there. And then fast forward, I mean, maybe I'm a monster. You might think I'm a monster, but so two things. I love when they move Dren to the farmhouse, because at this point she's more of an adult, type of species. But I love when Elsa chops her tail off. Hear me out. Hear me out with this. I might sound like a monster, and okay. So when with asking that question, if we thought that Elsa would be a good mother, I feel like that is such a loaded question, right? Because it's like there obviously in general there's some women where they don't even want to have children. There's some women where they're just like they cannot wait to have children, right? And I actually feel like that's the theme of this movie. The theme of this movie is parenthood. Like it gave me vibes, Rosemary's Baby, It's Alive, so stuff like that, of course, like, oh, in Eraserhead. Oh my God, through and through Eraserhead, right? So yeah, there's that.
Yes.
But it showcases just like the not so great parts of parenthood. And where at first, yeah, she, with Dren having her tantrums, you know what I mean? Well, first you're so surprised at what Dren can do as like this little being, and she could spell, and when she spelled out nerd, and then Elsa gave the name Dren. It's cute, at first. And then it just changes. So I feel like in general, first with Elsa, she is such a complex character. Like on, I feel like I feel like she would be a good mother because she is an overachiever. You know what I mean? So on that kind of thing. And I feel like it's so fascinating to look at it because I feel like she's driven by her science, like scientific ambition, but then she's also trying to bury her trauma. You know what I mean? So she's in the middle, and I feel like that's what makes it fascinating. It makes it unsettling to watch because even with that, she's so sweet to Clive when he does what she wants. But when she doesn't, she has to prove a point. So you have these two alpha females going at it. And that's pretty much what it comes down to, kind of like a tit for tat. And I agree with you where it's like Elsa was 100% jealous that she's like, I'm not a monster, but I get it. She's the one that literally, like, no, she didn't birth her, but she was there from the beginning. She was on board. Clive wanted nothing to do with her. He tried to kill her. I don't care what anyone says. He didn't know. He didn't know that she would be able to breathe underwater. He was stuttering and
Uh,
sweating. And then obviously Elsa doesn't want to think that about Clive, so they just swiftly move on. But even with their relationship, they have some stuff that's going on where they kind of sweep it under the rug, and so that just kind of amps up like their innerness. You know what I mean? Why she acts the way that she does. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying I would ever do it, but she been had these issues even before Dren, right? So then again, I feel like all of this, her unresolved trauma from her childhood, we start to see it on air. Like when she gives Dren, we get to the farmhouse. We're gonna have to talk about that scene just real quick. We get to the farmhouse, and she's not giving Clive attitude. She's not. She's not. She's giving Elsa attitude. And it's just like, kind of biting the hand that feeds you. And again, what makes it worse is they're two alpha females. Like obviously Elsa wants to rule, but Dren wants to rule. She's at this early stage where she feels like she's trapped and she's an adult. And of course she was peeking in on them having their sexy time. And so it's just like, okay, you're seeing your supposed daddy figure as a man you want to sleep with. That's not cool. But she clearly sees Elsa as competition. And it's like, how can you do this? Is the woman that took care of you. Literally, he left you for dead. He tried to kill you so many times. But sure, right? So I say all that. I don't think that she, in a traditional sense, she would have been a great mother. But I do think that because she would constantly project, she was projecting, but I do think that she would have eventually came around, and not saying that's a good mother, because it's not. Who would want a mom who's going to be in competition with you? Like, that's crazy, even though I know that's a thing, right?
Yeah, but I
So
think you've changed my mind. Just
oh, you think
to
so?
to to color your train of thought, I just want to let you know I think you may have changed my mind.
Okay. So
Please
it's
keep
just
going.
clearly she wanted, Elsa wanted more control than an actual connection. I think at first she wanted a connection, but clearly she did. So when she saw that Dren was drawing Clive instead of her, that is kind of like messed up. And then at first I thought, moving forward, when she saw pictures of her that she drew towards the end, I thought, oh, maybe she changed her mind. But it's like, no, that's not the reason why. I think that she was shifting clearly into something else. And, it's gross. But anyway, the thing is,
Yeah.
too, I like the scene when she cuts her tail off, because it's kind of like what you said. I agree with you with Dren, where it's just like she's the one that found the cat and the cat was hers. And then all of a sudden you take it away. And it was kind of very snippy and petty of Elsa to take the cat away. Like, come on, the cat's not bothering any. Clearly, the cat was there first. And the cat's fine. It's been days. But, she left that little comment, and sometimes you don't get what you want. It's just like, oh, like, she wanted to pull her down a little bit. And then, so Elsa had to, not Elsa, Dren clearly had to get her lick back. So that's why she killed the cat. It's unfortunate. I don't approve of it at all. I have a cat. So, but then, once again, it's just kind of like you have these, even though it's like, it's a monster. She's not human, but she still has that thing that's in her. So I say all that just because it sounds messed up with me saying I like that she did that, because it's kind of like, yes, we know that Dren clearly could kill her, right? But I think on Elsa's case, she kind of wanted to remind her who she is. And it's just like, you were stepping out of line. So in order to keep you in line, this is what I'm going to do. And clearly it's crazy. It is crazy that was happening, but she killed a cat. Then you threatened her. What? Just because you want to go outside. And all I'm saying is, too, because I feel like I went the long way for this, if she was treating Clive the same as she was Elsa, I'd be like, yeah, no, but she wasn't. It was like everything that Elsa was doing was just wrong. Even when she's like, eat your dinner, she wants meat. And, and then I don't even like that Clive was commenting, because first of all, don't say anything. You don't even like her. And honestly, all the hard work is kind of done. You know what I mean? And now you want to step in and give your opinion, which is appreciated, but nobody asked you, So it could be like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a woman thing. It's just, and maybe I'm secretly power hungry, but I understand where Elsa's coming from. And did she go too far with cutting off her tail? Yes. Maybe instead there could have been something else. Maybe she needs to go on a timeout or something where she's locked in a box. I don't know. Not saying that makes it better, but that's a lot, you know? And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, again, there's so much stuff that I feel like when it comes to like mother and daughter type of thing, even when she gave her a locket, she gave her clothes, she gave her a doll, she was, I don't know, like Elsa was trying, even though she has her own trauma. She has a lot of stuff that she needs to unpack, and she should be in therapy. I actually think that everybody should be in therapy just because it could be
Oh yeah.
helpful. But yeah, like, I don't know, again, like, you just see, I like how we saw the moments throughout the movies where she was really nurturing, trying to nurture, Dren. And in some ways, I feel like it also, again, softened her up. I think that it helped their relationship in some ways. In some ways, because I'm sure that Clive never seen this side of Elsa. And maybe, we're going to get to the end. Maybe that, she's more open to being a mom, but I don't know, that there's still like this conflict of her ambition and her trauma. And I just feel like it's just so well layered for not just like a sci-fi horror, but a movie in general.
Mm.
Because it's like we can, like, it can go either way. You know what I mean? With some stuff, like, I don't feel like there is a right or wrong answer if she would be a good mom or a bad mom. But from what because she herself is complicated. And then Dren herself, it's so complicated where it's just like, I don't understand. Like I said, I don't, in some ways, like I keep on saying, I understand Elsa. I wouldn't have gone those same paths. But with Dren, I don't understand the thought process there because she's the one that really nourished you and like did all these things. And I keep on saying it, but it's like I'm trying to think of a time where it was just like, not saying that Clive didn't care for her, even though I know he said, "Oh, we loved you. We love you." And it's just like, did you though, Clive? You did try to drown her. You did try to whack her with a lot of things. You were always screaming and scaring her. And it's like she forgot about all that. And she was just, her hormones were raging. I don't know. But yeah, so just to answer, those were some of my favorite parts. But I also love when she's being a nurturer. And yeah, when she chopped her tail off, I feel like there was something that lit the fire in her. And once again, they and didn't stop there with the tit for tats, between the two. So yeah.
Okay, well, I actually have a lot I want to respond to with that, but we are going to get into the ending now. But it is getting into the ending that made me kind of change my mind, especially based on something you were saying, or at least I don't know if it changed my mind because again, I think it's the film is asking us questions like, would Elsa have been a good mother? And I think there's an argument no, and there's an argument yes. I thought, I think it's showing what like maybe she wouldn't have been a good mother based on her actions in terms of how she treated Dren like a doll and
Right.
all that. But like, and then when Dren started to like actually be like, no, I have wants and needs, Elsa became petty. But
Mhm.
Elsa's human. And again, this is why I think it's important that somebody like Sarah Polley takes this performance because there's somebody like you that can see or at least or empathize with Sarah Polley's actions because you're right. Sarah Polley was there for her. Now, I think in terms of Dren, because Dren has that human quality of her. Now, my thoughts are going to be scattered because you threw me with you made some really interesting points that I have to respond to. I think that you're right. It is unfair that Elsa did all the encouragement, nourishment, was nothing but supportive of Dren, where Clive was absent at best and antagonistic at worst. And but Dren is attracted to or was attracted to Clive. That's because I think, the human part of her, it's the combination of you want what you can't have. So when, I think of cats, cats they know when somebody like wants to pick them up and somebody loves them. But if you notice, they often go to the person who's like, get away from me, I don't like cats. Every cat I've ever had has always gone to the person who comes into my house and is like, I don't like it. I'm allergic to cats. They go right to it. So I think it's like that element, but also you want what you can't have. But also, Elsa or Dren is not stupid. Dren is mute, doesn't talk. She's naive and doesn't have any, life experience. But and this goes to what you were saying with like, you could look at Dren on the table as her tail's getting cut, feel terrible for her. But she's also, if you notice, and because I've seen this quite a few times, her eyes, she knows what to do to get Elsa to stop. And it's like a moment before she was like threatening Elsa, but now she's like, no, it's me. I'm Dren, the one you love. Obviously, she's not saying that. And Elsa's not falling for it, which I think, could make Elsa a good mother, the type to know, like, I know you're trying to manipulate me now, and I still have to be the one in charge and make, the parent that makes the hard choices. So
Right.
you can argue that Elsa is a good mother. I think that there's a lot going to that. But I'll say as we get into the end, it's the ending, so everything goes awry. What happens with Clive and Dren happens. Elsa's upset. They decide it's time to end this, but Dren dies, we think. They bury her, and other scientist comes and you know that Dren's buried. But also what I wanted to respond to with you was why I think Elsa was a good mother is because she evolved into a good mother. I think, at the beginning, even seeing how good she was, put in quotes, good with Dren as a child, she was doing the good part she was happy about with Dren. But she evolved into a good mother because even after all the bad, even after Dren did it with Clive, Elsa still mourned her and loved her, and that's what makes a true mother. So that's why I think you changed my mind. But so anyway, but Dren's not dead, and Dren is now a man. Like we saw with Fred and Ginger.
Yeah.
So the other scientists come, the brother and the scientist, male Dren comes in, swoops up that scientist, and from that moment on, the first time I saw this, my jaw dropped and remained dropped through to the credits. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what the heck was happening. Even though as it was happening, I'm like, oh, we saw this with Ginger. We know what's happening, but I didn't know they were going to go here. But it's like, how did I not know they were going to go here? Splice is science fiction based. it is also asking us those timeless questions um, from Greek writings of Oedipal and Electra complexes. You know, the Oedipal complex, falling in love with your parents, gets literally displayed here. And, you know, Dren is with her father and her mother. And it's so messed up. It's Splice never stops asking us messed up questions, you know, while shocking the hell out of you. It's a terrifying ending where male Dren kills the scientist, Clive's brother, assaults Elsa. It's also incredibly suspenseful with a dread that you do not know what to expect, no matter how many horror movies or sci-fi films you have seen. Splice plays with the audience on so many levels. We feel Elsa's hurt and betrayal at Clive, the devastation and loss she has for Dren when we think she's dead, especially when we see that Dren did do drawings of Elsa too. And like you started to say, unfortunately, when you put it all together, you realize you think, oh, Dren did love Elsa. But when you know now that Dren did drawings of Clive, doing drawings of Elsa is not a good thing.
Yes.
And it's leading to what it leads to. It leads to male Dren from an animalistic standpoint, asserting his dominance over Elsa in the worst possible way. Again, it's all just so shocking, but then the epilogue leaves us with even more questions. You know, we're left with questions. Elsa's pregnant. Will she survive this pregnancy? Is what she's doing morally right? Because she's selling what happened with the progeny to this company. You know, the company just as messed up. Yes. They did not want to be responsible for any of this, but since Clive and Elsa already did it, they see no reason not to get involved and try and profit off of it. And so overall, it leaves you with just as many questions at the end as it asks throughout the film. And I think that it's a really shocking, powerful, intelligent, divisive, angry inducing movie, but it's definitely memorable.
I love the ending. It is so chaotic because once the other two show up and the thing, Mel Dren just pretty much lifts him out of the air. At first I thought that he was just gonna like drop him or something, but he was up in the tree dead. Then Dren doesn't stop. He goes for the brother next. And that's so unfortunate because the brother was so nosy. We told him, we were thinking this, like, mind your business, mind
Ah,
your business, right? And then kind of what you said, like, I don't wish that on Elsa at all. That was such a hard scene to watch, And like you said already, it's kind of like that's not a good thing with the drawings at all. And
mhm.
her hesitation to even kill him because she raised this little thing and it just heartlessly stabbed Clive with no type of thing. It was like it wasn't even out. Well, it wasn't even Dren anymore, the Dren that they knew anymore. And I thought that that was very sad. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it is one of these movies where it does make you think. And then even when it comes to Elsa, like I said, she's a likable character, even though she does some stuff that is so questionable. In the end, it proved that she is a true scientist because it seemed like her scientific, experiment, it failed. And like a true, scientist, she wants to try again because she feels like this time she'll know what she'll do. And it's like, I mean, I don't want to see a sequel because I'm
Ah,
tired.
okay.
I'm tired. Like, I don't want to see what happens,
Right.
because I feel like it's also like one of these movies where yes, things feel very uncomfortable, but it's also like a cautionary tale. You know what I mean? In some kind of ways. But the fact that, she wants to do this again and it's like, okay, and it's not because she was caught. I think that she wanted to, she wanted to carry. And yeah, it's one of those
I think that
endings.
the scientist in her, yeah, it still wants to know.
Yeah. So that's oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
Well,
Yeah, it's on the outside, it look it's a very this is what happened. It's very straightforward, but it's not very straightforward. There's again the layering of this movie is incredible.
I agree completely, and I echo that. This movie does make you uncomfortable and asks difficult questions, but I think it's for the horror fan that enjoys sci-fi horror, but intelligent sci-fi horror. It never talks down to the audience, but the way that it's crafted, like you said, it's full of these really intense, strong performances characters that have many layers, ideas that have many layers, but also a lot of blood and gore and moments that are going to assault your eyes and you have to prepare yourself for. But I really do think that Splice, because of these reasons, is, in my opinion, one of the best horror movies of the 2000s. But it's definitely not for everyone, but I really think everybody should give it at least one chance.
Disturbing, spiraling stuff that goes on. It's so much. It's deeply uncomfortable. There's a lot of taboos. There's personal boundaries. And, I just love the fact that this movie isn't not afraid to make the audience squirm.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for watching another episode of the Rabid Dog's House. Are you a fan of Splice? Sarah Polley, what is your favorite sci-fi horror movie? Please comment below. Thank you, Zena Dixon, the real queen of horror, for joining us tonight. As always, you can find Zena over at realqueenofhorror.com, on YouTube under her Real Queen of Horror moniker, or over at Wicked Horror. And I'm Justin. You can also find me at Wicked Horror, over on Pop Culture, or over on Blue Sky. Links below. Thanks, Zena, for giving Splice a chance. I know it's an intense, crazy one, but I am glad you gave it a chance.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, you put me on to so many movies that changed my world.
And let us know again, everybody, have you seen Splice, and what do you think? Otherwise, we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.